All right, hello again. This is Jeff Scott of Blackhawk Technical College. I've been going over, starting to do the lectures in the book. I've already done the PowerPoint lectures for the first 11 chapters in our Java book, Tony Gaddis Java book for the 152, 143 beginning or intro to Java programming class for the spring 2016 semester. But now I'm going to go through Chapter 2. All right, we'll go through most of the stuff that's here, and when we get done, I will build two different Java programs for you, just so you can see this also. Where are we here? Wanted to show you something, but I got to get over there. So I have figured out what the problem was with the font size. Whoopsie, I don't want to do that. It's okay. Cancel. So you can see the font size has now been increased. Still looking for a good type of font to use. I don't really like this. I tried Arial and I didn't like that either. So let's go back into the book. So I'm in Chapter 2. We'll talk about the parts of a Java program, print versus print line, variables and literals, the 8 different Java primitive types, the arithmetic operators, of which there's 5, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and modulo, how you can use those arithmetic operators in the combined operators, a little bit about conversion between data types, how to create a constant in Java, the string class, variable scope, how to create comments, and I've started showing you that already, a word or two about programming styles. Then I'm going to write 2 different Java programs, one that'll show keyboard input, one that'll show dialog boxes. Every chapter from now on ends with a page or 2 or 3 on common errors to avoid. I typically won't go over those, but it's a good thing for you to look at because those are just errors that really anyone makes, not so much just a newbie Java programmer, but any Java programmer. So, a Java program has parts that serve specific purposes. We already looked at this previously, but again, that is a comment. Anything that starts with a / from then on to the right of that line is a single line comment. So we've got a file that's called simple.java, which means in it we must have a line that says public class simple. Public meaning that it's called its access modifier. It's available to the public. It is a class and its name is simple. Everything we do within there has got to be within curly braces. In here we have what's called one method. The method's name is main. It returns nothing, so we say the return type is void. It's public, which means it can be called both from this class or from any other class. It's static, which for right now, just think it means there's one of them. And it can have things passed in. Okay, so those are the possible parameters. This should print out on the screen. Programming is great fun. Now, I'm not going to create that, but if I did, it would be very similar to the first program that I did for you, the first payroll one. And if we did put that in exactly and then ran it, that's what the output would look like. So the author explains everything I just explained to you. This line is called the class header. All right, and as they mentioned, starting on the bottom of the page, public is a Java keyword, must be in all lowercase letters. It's also known as an access specifier, which means this class is open or available to the public. Class also must, so this must be in all lowercase, so must this. It's another Java keyword that indicates the beginning of a class definition. This is a program identifier. It's something you as a programmer creates. Class names should start with an uppercase letter like this. If this had been called, for example, simple program, the S would have been capitalized and the P in program would have been capitalized and we would have run them together. So if you've got something with multiple words in it, so something like this, you do it like this, where the P in simple, the S in simple, and the P in program are both capitalized. Maybe it's easier to see like this, like if we had tax rate, something like that. So, a couple things about classes. You may create more than one class in a file, but only one can be public. And that public class is what you have to name it. So since this was simple, we have to name it simple.java. And as mentioned underneath there, Java is a case-sensitive language. Okay? It's also a block structured language, and everything in your blocks go between curly braces. Make sure for every opening curly brace you have you have a closing curly brace. On the bottom of page 29 here, this is a method header. It marks the beginning of a method. All right? And as far as its points, and they mention them right here, public, which again means it's available to the public. Static, which for right now we're just saying it means there's one of them that is shared as necessary. Void means that main doesn't return anything. Main is the name of the method. And in the parentheses there, we can, if we want to, pass in parameters. Those parameters, in this case, are called args, and they are a string array. All right, and that's exactly what it mentions in the book here. Inside of main, we've got a curly brace, a line that says print out to the screen, programming is great fun, and then an ending curly brace. All right. Now, notice that this line ends with a semicolon, because as mentioned on the bottom of page 30 and going on to the next page, the Java, any executable line of Java code must end with a semicolon, except comments, class headers and method headers, and anything with a brace. We could also add to that an if does not have a semicolon on the end, a while does not have a semicolon on the end, a switch does not have a semicolon on the end, and a for loop does not have a semicolon on the end. We will talk about a do while in Chapter 5, which is another kind of loop which does have a semicolon on the end. Here's some rules about Java. Again, Java is case sensitive. All Java programs must be stored in a file that ends with .java. Any comment you create is ignored by the compiler. A Java file can have as many classes as you want. So if I have 7 classes, only 1 can be public and 6 can be private. Every Java application, not applet, but application, must have a main. For every left brace, you need a right brace. Statements end with semicolons, except for the stuff we talked about at the top here. So here's those characters that we've worked with thus far. // for a single line comment, parameters that go in the parentheses, curly braces because it's a block structured language, quotation marks, we could put strings in there, and semicolon. All right, print versus print line, it's easier just to show it to you. If you've got print, the cursor stays on the same line. If you have print line, it jumps up to the next line, so it adds a new line. Other than that, there really is no difference. There's plenty of examples in here that you can take a look at on your own as you have a desire to. If I want to force there to be a new line at the end of a line, I can put in \n, which is an escape sequence. Out of all these escape sequences that are shown in here, the two that you'll use almost exclusively are \n for new line and \t for a horizontal tab. All right, again, Java is a strongly typed language, so when I come in here and do this, this is declaring a variable called value that's of type integer. This declares it, this initializes it. And what you'll see, if we look at this right here, and I'm going to get rid of these line numbers, there's nothing wrong at all with what the author did here. But just so you know, most often you'll see it like this, int value equal 5. So this is a variable declaration. All right. This is a variable initialization. Make this a little smaller. And this is a combo, declaration / initialization. So it does both in one line. When you declare a variable, you're not setting aside any memory, you're just letting the system know that it exists. This basically, well, this actually is going to set aside some memory, enough to hold an int, but this will put a value in that memory. This will do both. And they explain all that stuff in here. This is actually called an assignment statement. The single equals is known as an assignment operator. So a very simple example right there. If I want to combine things together, notice what we have here. So this will say enter a value that is greater than 0 and less than 10. We use a plus sign here, and that concatenates these strings together. So the plus sign is used for addition with numbers and for concatenation for strings. So it's known as an overloaded operator. It does double duty. Be careful if you've got a numeric variable, never put it inside of double quotes or you'll get an error from the compiler. We've talked a little bit about identifiers. Those are names that you create. The rules for these are the official rules, so to speak. I will tell you that when you are creating identifiers, you're best off using only letters if at all possible. Numbers, possibly. But don't ever use underscores or dollar signs. There's really no reason to do that. And you can never include spaces. And they're case sensitive, and they can't be a keyword. So one of those words we looked at back in Chapter 1. All right. There's some more stuff to it. Class names, for example, the first name or first letter in the class name should be uppercase. We've talked about that before. All right. Java has 8 primitive data types. They're shown right here. They're byte, short, int, long, float, double, and there's really 2 more. The other 2 are char and boolean. But notice these first 4, these are all whole numbers. And as you go up, they have bigger sizes, negative 128 to positive 127, negative 32,000 plus to positive 32,000 plus, negative 2 billion plus to positive 2 billion plus, and I don't know how to read that number. A float and a double, they deal with numbers that can potentially have a decimal place. There is a reason for what I'm about to tell you, and that is we'll probably very rarely, if ever, use floats. We'll always use doubles. You'll see why later on in this chapter. So integers are whole numbers. They give you some examples here. Floating points are numbers that can have a decimal place. All right. If you make a variable of type float, then when you give it a value, you must put an F on the end. All right. Either a capital F or a lowercase f. And that's the reason that most developers never use floats, because it just looks ugly. All right. When you are setting up the values of variables, never ever put a dollar sign like that. Never ever put a comma in there. You can't have that stuff forced to be put in there on the output. I've already shown you that in the last chapter. So another simple program here. The chart data type stores a single character. This is the only time in Java that you put things in single quotes. In JavaScript, we could put a string in single quotes or double quotes, not in Java. In Java, only double quotes for a string, only single quotes for a char or character variable. Java also supports the Unicode Character Set, so you can set up characters for like a divide sign, which is that minus with a dot up above it and below it, and a few other things. As it says, you might want to refer to Appendix B to look at some more of that. I'm not going to go over it any more than that. You should be able to, by now, there's a program here, program 2-16 on page 53. I'm not going to go over it, but you should be able to look at it yourselves and figure out what's going on here. If you can't, it's your responsibility to go and ask in class, and then we'll go over it. Variables can only hold one value at a time, so if you change the value, here it says x is assigned 5, then we reassign it to 99. So this will print out 5, but then this will print out 99 because we've changed its value. And that's what they're showing you right there. The arithmetic operators, we've got 5 of them. Addition, the plus, subtraction, the minus, multiplication, the asterisk, divide, which is a forward slash. Don't use a backward slash because it won't work. And percent sign for modulus, which is the remainder operator. Same things that we had exactly in the JavaScript class. So they've got their own payroll program here. A little bit more stuff in there than mine, but you again should be able to read through this and not have any problems with it. Integer division, if I do this, I'm just going to grab that code that they have in there. All right. You might think that when we do this, we get 2.5. That's not what happens. We actually get the number 2.0 in there. So this is not but it is. And the reason for that is when you do this, you're taking a whole number and you're dividing it by a whole number. So it does give you 2.5, just like you want it. But it says, since it's integer by integer division, it says throw away the decimal place. Then it says, oh, but it is a double, so add the 0.0 on the end. So how do I force that to give me 2.5? I'll quickly show you 3 ways. I can say number equals and do what's called a cast. So I can cast the first number, or I can cast the second number, or I can cast both numbers. And I can put a space in there if that makes it easier for you to see what's going on. Totally fine. But I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. All 3 of those that are right there will give me 2.5, which is what I want. I don't want to do this because people sometimes make the mistake of doing this. They say double there, and they still put in here 5 divided by 2, but you've got the same problem. All right, it's going to do an integer by an integer division. It's going to throw that away, so it'll still give you 2.2. So these won't work. That one won't work. These 3 here will give you 2.5. All right. Precedence is kind of like what you learned back in high school algebra. This is a negative sign. You do multiplication, division, and modulo before you do addition and subtraction. So there's the level or order of precedence right there. If you want to change it, you use parentheses. He has a lot of these try it out practices in here. I'm not going to go through those. All right. Java has a built-in math class, so notice I can do this. That says 4 squared, in other words. That's going to take 4. It's going to square it and take 16.0 and assign that to result. When you work with these math operations, it expects whatever goes into those parentheses there to be of type double. You see the same thing here. So there's 6 cubed, for example. Here's 5 to the 4th power. Square root works the same way, that it has to be a double in there. Math is a built-in class that exists in Java for you, so you can just use it. The combined assignment operators are the ones here: plus equals, minus equals, times equals, divide equals, and modulo equals. So in other words, if I wanted to do this, so let's say I had int x equals 17, and then someplace later on in my program I wanted to say x equals x plus 10. Totally legit to do that. Or I can also say x plus equals 10. So this line right here and this line right here are identical in functionality. Most people choose that one just because it's a little less typing. The conversion between primitive data types, what happens is, here is the hierarchy. So if you mix doubles and floats and all these, etc., it'll try to promote something of a lower rank to something of a higher rank. So it is adding or subtracting or multiplying or dividing or moduloing apples and apples, not apples and oranges. I already showed you the cast operator. If you want to create a constant in Java, you use the word final. And although you don't have to, typically you put it in uppercase because that's convention. I'm not going to do it like this, like the author shows it here. You can if you want to, but rather than putting in this, I'm going to put mine in like that and not use the underscore. Okay? If you like the underscore like they show, then feel free to use that. String class, string is not a variable. It is a class. So as I've shown you previously, if we come in here and we go out to the Java API, java.sun.com, we go out there and we find the APIs and we go to Java SE8 and we start to peruse our way down in here, there's string. So string is a class, and these are all the different things that you can do with a string. We'll do plenty of them. We'll look at a lot of them as the semester goes on. All right. Now back in Chapter 1, they talked about how objects are created from classes. Strings are done the same way, but strings are a little bit different. So if I come through there and I do this, if I come through there and I say string with a capital S because it's a class, name equals Jeff Scott, must be in double quotes. What actually happens behind the scenes is this. String name equals new string Jeff Scott. That's actually what happens. And I can set up a string like that. Most people do it this way, again, because it's less typing. But this is an alias because that's actually what happens behind the scenes. All right. So there's a bunch of stuff in here. Strings have a length. So in other words, if I were to come into that example that I just showed you, and I came in there and said int len for length equals name.length. All right, it would have a value of what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So it would have a value of 10. And I left something off there, sorry. I'd need paren here. Okay. Here's some of the different methods that you can use with strings. These are very similar to things that we saw back in the JavaScript class, so we'll talk about them in class, but most of them are self-explanatory. If I want to grab a character, if I want the length, which I just showed you, if I want to convert a string to all lowercase, if I want to convert a string to all uppercase, etc. Those are all mentioned in that API that I showed you before. Variable scope. If you define a variable inside of a method, for instance, when we came in here and we defined these variables, they were all defined inside of main. So they're only known in main. They're only known between here and here. All right, if we try to use them outside of that context, we're going to get an error message. Comments I've already mentioned to you. How a single line comment starts with // If I want a multi-line comment, it starts with /* and it ends with //. So multi-line comment. Okay. There's also something that's called a Javadoc comment, which I'm not going to talk about right now, but we will talk about it at a later time. If you create Javadoc comments, they start with a /** and they end with a //, but it allows you to create comments that look more similar to the comments that are actually in the Java API itself. Programming style, the author mentions, shows you the same program written twice. All right, so he says you could write it like this, or you could write it like that. Then he says, now look at them. Which one is easier to look at and potentially debug? Well, this one looks kind of like a mess. This one has got some programming style. There's tabs that have been used, a lot of white space when necessary, and what they're talking about there is the establishment of your own program style. All right. The last things that are discussed in the chapter here is they talk about keyboard input. I'm going to demonstrate that for you in a minute. And these are the different things that you can use with it. They're on page 86. So we're going to write a program similar to this one. And then starting on page 92, using dialog boxes, which look like this. So I'm going to show you both of those in just a couple minutes. And you'll also learn how to convert strings into numbers in just a second. All right, so that basically is it for Chapter 2. Again, read through the common errors to avoid because sooner or later we all make them. All right. What we're going to do as a class, and I'm still not sure because I'm still looking at the programs to do, for your first assignment, we're going to do 2 of these programming challenges as a class. I'm not sure which ones yet, but we'll grab 2 of them. One of them will probably be the miles per gallon. All right, and the other one, I'm not sure what it will be, but we'll pick one of them. Possibly this, I don't know. Shouldn't even say that. Possibly this stock transaction one. All right, so I'm going to come back. I'm going to stop taping now, and I'm going to show you on the next tape an example of writing that program or that employee program payroll one time using the keyboard and one time using the message dialogues. After that, we'll come back and start going over Chapter 3.